Hey guys, welcome back to the Mountaineers. So today I'm going to talk about the presence of Italian prisoners of war in British India during World War II and the role played by these POWs in mountaineering. It so happened that on the outbreak of World War II, the Britain declared war against Germany the same year. And anybody who had some sort of connection with Germany, Japan or Italy obviously was to be held strictly by British. During that time in British India, there were a lot of explorations going on in the mountains. One such exploration, that is mountaineering expedition, was going on in the Nanga Parbat region, all comprising of Germans, that is German expedition. They were trying to find a route towards the summit of Nanga Parbat. On the other hand, during that time there was another expedition going on in Sikkim region. It was a German expedition comprising of Germans and Swiss mountaineers. Now, due to the stance of Britishers towards the people belonging to Axis countries, the Germans were held and put to prison, whereas the Swiss team was allowed to go. Now, when the Italian army surrendered to British army, huge amount of POWs were transported to Africa in its concentration camps. But taking care of these prisoners of war was quite expensive and demanded a lot of manpower. Hence, it was decided that these Italian POWs be transferred to India. Hence, they landed at Bombay, and then they were transported to different concentration camps. During that time, there were 6 concentration camps, that is 6 group of concentration camps in Bangalore, Ramgarh, Bhopal, Bikaner, Dehradun, and in Yol, that is in Dharamshala. Under these groups of concentration camps, there were n number of camps. Now, if we talk specifically about the concentration camp which was in Yol, it had camp number 25, 26, 27, and 28. And these were occupied by Italian prisoners of war. Now let's talk specifically about the Italian prisoners of war concentration camps in Yol. Now the condition in the concentration camps in the mountains were comparatively favorable because the atmosphere was that of mountains and hills, and they were allowed to do a lot of adventurous activities. Now the normal routine of concentration camps used to be just like any other concentration camp. There were a lot of physical labor involved, but apart from that, these Italian prisoners of war were allowed to do a lot of extracurricular activities too. Even they had their own currency which they used for exchange of goods among themselves. They were allowed to take part in football matches. By the end of week, there was a movie that was projected. They were allowed to pursue their hobbies like sculpturing, carpenters, and other artistic works. But one longing was above everything else, that was that of freedom. Till the end of war, there was no freedom to be attained by these prisoners of war. And these prisoners of war also had a huge fondness for mountains and mountaineering. By the virtue of being surrounded by the Dhauladhar range, they could convince the Britishers to let them go for explorations and mountaineering expeditions. And the Britishers allowed to do so purely on the word that they will not escape beyond the area allotted to them, and they will not make any contacts or any closeness towards the people, those who are enemy of the British Empire. Hence, purely on a word of mouth, they were allowed to go for mountaineering expeditions. Now, sometimes it used to happen that people, when they went beyond the allowed region, they used to be captured by the surrounding villagers and they were brought back to the Britishers. Now, Italians were quite surprised to see the loyalty of villagers towards their suppressors, and they used to wonder why it is so. Now, since they were allowed to go on mountaineering expeditions, they did their best with available resources, and most of these resources with respect to mountaineering equipment were absolutely faulty and of no use. But still, they made a huge mark in the mountaineering in Dhauladhar ranges during that time. Some of the expedition team also went as far as the border of Zanskar range, right? If I name a few expeditions undertaken by these Italian prisoners of war, some of them would be such. Dhar Nirvana was climbed in 1943 by the Italian climbers who were basically prisoners of war. Then in the same year, Punta Lena, a peak of 4,807 meters, was climbed. Juargunda in 1944. In 1945, Two Gun Peak was climbed, and the same year, the famous peak in Chamba, Kailas, was climbed. Kundi Jot was climbed in 1946 by Italian prisoners of war, and a lot of information by these Italian prisoners of war was brought in the form of word, observation, paintings, sketches to the Britishers. Hence, all the exploratory information was gathered by Britishers through the Italian prisoners of war mountaineers. Now, by the end of war, the arrangements began where the Italian prisoners of war were to be transported back to their countries. By 1947, the last prisoners of war were transported from these camps and they were deported back to their country. Now, it is very iconic to note that the dedication and the fondness these people had for adventure and mountaineering. Even in such conditions, absolute dire conditions, without almost zero equipment, they climbed these formidable peaks with whatever resources they had. So this is the story of Italian prisoners of war in India. You can find these particular informations in britishlibrary.uk. If you go to that website, you just type Italian prisoners of war, you will get a lot of information and a lot of books written by some of the POWs during that time. So that's all from my side. I hope you like this particular piece of information, and we'll be back with more such informative videos. Till then, take care, see you soon.